Okay, good morning everyone, or good afternoon depending on where you are calling from. Welcome to today's session. I'm Delphine Adeno-Ousu. I'm the Executive Director of EUCCAN. The EU Chamber of Commerce in Canada is an advocacy body in charge of disseminating CETA information and support EU-Canada trade relations. We are celebrating this month the third year of CETA implementation, but also EUCCAN's 25th anniversary. And we had a great CETA panel discussion last week, so I invite you to watch it again on our YouTube channel. I will share with you later the link. And from today until mid-December, you will get a unique opportunity to discover trade and investment opportunity in each Canadian province. And I'm very glad today to start with Alberta. Before we get started, I just invite you to use the gallery view on the top right corner of your screen so you can see the speaker. And I also invite you to use the chat box and the Q&A session. We will have 15 minutes roughly of the Q&A session at the end of Ron's presentation. So now I would like to introduce the speaker of the day, Ron Hoffman. He's the interim CEO of Invest Alberta Corporation since its creation in July 2020. Ron has dedicated most of his professional life advancing Canada's interest on the world stage. He served as diplomat in many countries, mostly in Asia. He also held key positions in Ottawa, most recently as Director General for Strategic Policy at the Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Ron, over to you. You have 45 minutes to share with us the trade and investment opportunity in your province, and then we'll have some questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Delphine, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I want to say we're bringing a bit of a team effort to this because this is a very, very important network and audience and group of partners for us. So I'm joined at the back by the beach scene, just so you don't think that Edmonton has bad weather. Is Ryan Ratke, who's kind of in charge of everything Europe. And Bonnie Nunari beside me is the other half of our investment support. So the ministry plays a role on regulatory coordination and strategic policy and supporting ministers. And then I'm kind of the business end because we act like a corporation, like a private sector corporation in Invest Alberta Corporation. So the team here created a beautiful 60-page presentation full of statistics and all kinds of facts that would interest somebody, including sector profiles and things. And I'm sure at some point, some of the people on this call will be interested in some of that. But we're not gonna expose that to you. But we're gonna try to keep it a little bit higher level. Delphine, I may not speak for 40 minutes because I know everybody's time is precious. We don't want to turn this into a lecture. And we certainly don't want to make this sort of a bureaucratic exercise. That's not what Alberta's all about. And I want to kind of talk a little bit higher level about sort of why we think Alberta makes sense for Canada-EU relations, for European-based companies in Canada, for those who are looking to expand, or those who don't like the house prices in Toronto and want to have a better standard of living. With all kinds of reasons we want to talk about Alberta. But I do want to say kind of on a personal level, that I grew up in Winnipeg. I lived and worked in Toronto. I'd spent a fair bit of time in Ottawa, and I've lived in half a dozen cities around the world and twice in Europe. I spent 6 years living in the EU, or in the EU, and I'm a German citizen, and I've got an EU passport. So very, very familiar with European terrain. But on a personal level, I want to say I chose to come to Alberta half a dozen years ago, and I had a great job in Ottawa. I had all opportunities, but this province, for me, on a personal level, for the reasons that we're going to get into, I think is in many ways the most compelling, exciting province in Canada. And frankly, it shapes up around the world for a place to live, work, do business, retire, have families, and all of that. And I'm saying that in part because, I mean, most of the people on this call are based in Canada and they're European, or they work for European companies. We all know that Canada is a very big, diverse place. But one of our challenges is that many Canadians don't know the rest of Canada very well. And one of the things that we suffer from as Albertans is a stereotype of our province in the minds of Canadians, or many other Canadians, that just doesn't reflect reality. I've heard people over and over again who may have visited Calgary 20 years ago, or they went to the Stampede, or they have an uncle in Edmonton that they visited for Christmas once, talk about Alberta to other people. And it's invariably not accurate and paints a strange picture of what our province is all about. And I think probably we can say the same thing, that people from BC don't know Quebec, or people from Nova Scotia don't know Saskatchewan. But I think it matters more for Alberta because we're the third largest economy in Canada by measured by GDP. 2 of Canada's 5 largest cities are in Alberta. We have the youngest population in Alberta. We have the best educated population in Alberta. We have the highest GDP in Alberta. It's a place, even though we're struggling like everybody is, and we're struggling to some extent more than others, because we're suffering from the COVID pandemic situation like everybody is. But for us, it was kind of a double whammy because of the impact on energy prices and the knock-on effect for jobs. Now, we are a major energy jurisdiction, right? We have the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world. We have among the highest natural gas reserves in the world, but we're actually quite a diversified province. Our fastest growing sectors, and we'll get into this, are not energy, or they are energy, but they're green energy. They're unconventional energies. They're technology related to energy and the environment. And the other fast growing sectors are things like financial services, tourism, food, education. The energy sector is actually a relatively small part of our economy now. So don't go. Let's go back for a second. So what I wanted to do, I guess, is we'll go through maybe 15 or so slides that might take about 10 minutes or so. I may go on a few tangents now and again, and then hopefully we'll leave a little bit more than 20 minutes for questions. And some of this might be basic, and if people know Alberta well, I apologize that some of this is basic, but it's another reason I'm not going to go over it in a lot of detail. But I mean, we're a large province. I already mentioned that we're the 3rd largest economy. Calgary is our 4th biggest city. Edmonton's our 5th biggest city. They are dynamic, modern, innovative, culturally rich places that also have an extraordinary standard of living. I mean, I don't know, in fact, there are no cities in Canada, maybe Montreal to some extent, but there's no cities in Canada that have the quality of life that we have, that's attainable and reachable like we have in terms of house prices and education, excellent healthcare, and all of that. And that's a reason people continue to come from the rest of Canada, but people come from all over the world to Alberta. And I spent maybe 20 years of my professional life outside of Canada, talking about Canada. And for the last half dozen years, living in Asia, talking about Alberta in Canada. And when people learn and see sort of what we're all about, it is very, very easy to get people from India to Australia excited about what our province offers. And we have a steady flow of investors, students, tourists, professionals coming to Alberta to live and make their lives. So that's just kind of a broad level picture I had wanted to paint. And before I go into a little more details, I want to put on my diplomatic and strategic policy hat a little bit. I know that's probably going to scare the hell out of people, and I apologize. But let me just say one thing. You know, the world's geopolitical tectonic plates have shifted and are shifting. And the bottom line for Canada, this is true for every province in Canada, but the bottom line for Canada is that Europe has become much more important to us. Europe is going to be even more important for us going forward. And I'm saying this as someone who spent almost 10 years of my life in Greater China, living on the mainland and on the periphery of China. And for a time, I'd go into China every 2 weeks. And I'm a big believer that we need to engage a place like China. But China has become a reputational risk for companies. Trade and investment has been politicized to a higher degree than it's ever been. There are, you know, for companies that are evaluating risk in doing business, whether it's investing or trading or investing in building up their capacity to do business with that growing market, it has become a much more fraught relationship, and the risks have increased significantly. And when we talk about Asia, there's many countries besides China, but China's a big part of it and connected to much of the sort of business ecosystem and value chains of the region. And our other challenge is that the United States is more politicized than it's ever been. And this is not just the current administration. We all know, like all of our countries and companies doing business with the US and paying attention to the sort of political and economic environment, we know that it is increasingly protectionist and increasingly unpredictable. Even if the presidency changes this fall, Congress will be a very, very protectionist place. It will be a country that feels threatened by global change. So when we look around the world at who kind of our friends are, who, you know, where culturally we have common values and affinities, where we have the rule of law, where we have transparency and predictability. It's not perfect, and every country has some degree of protectionism. But I think when we look around the world going forward, the Canada-Europe relationship increasingly stands out as one that is worth investing in, and one that is probably underinvested now, as we're all looking to globalize. And then we're just realizing that that globalization effort that every country, every major company is doing and every country has to think about is proved to be just much more complicated in 2020 than it has been for a long time. And it's probably not going to get a lot easier going forward. So Ryan Radke behind me is going to be a very, very busy guy since he's in charge of Europe. But we're also going to be concentrating heavily on the European relationship as Invest Alberta Corporation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So maybe I'll go through the slides a little bit more quickly. I've already covered slide 1. I've covered this to some extent, and I've got to say, you know, talking to people around, especially in Asia, Asians love property. Maybe everybody does. I would put up a slide showing the house costs in Toronto, in Vancouver, and then in Calgary and Edmonton with photos. And that one slide was probably the one that struck people the most and prompted a conversation with us. And it's easy just to say this, but young people in Alberta and employees of companies and students who come to study and decide to stay, we have a challenging time at the moment, but people can get jobs and well-paying jobs in this province, and they can get homes to buy, and they can raise families in an affordable way with an absolutely amazing standard of living. So we'll go to the next one. Our strength is, and this is, I think, little known outside of Alberta, our strength is our people. I know that sounds like a cliche, but I've already said we have the youngest population, the best educated population in Canada. It's incredibly vibrant cities. Most of Alberta live in cities. They don't live on cattle ranches, although we've got great cattle ranches, and that's one of our strengths. The whole agri-food sector is one of our strengths. But 3/4 of Albertans live in large, dynamic, culturally rich, infrastructure, strong cities. Now, our weather sucks sometimes, but then it does in a lot of other places, and there's other things to compensate. You know, we live in a world where every single educated human being in any major endeavor in society has to pay attention to the environment. We're living in a world where the climate is changing, where the primacy of clean air and water and all aspects of society affected by climate change is something that's very real. Albertans have taken this seriously for a long time. We were the first jurisdiction, the first major energy jurisdiction in the world to actually put a carbon tax on major emitters. And we have invested heavily in technology. Our companies, our energy companies are high-tech companies, right? I mean, the easy conventional energy of the 1950s that was discovered here is only a small proportion of our energy mix right now. We have some of the most complex energy deposits in the world, and that means technology. So our companies invest dramatic amounts in research and development, technology acquisition and adoption for energy, gas, but increasingly green and renewable energy. whether it's thermal energy, solar, and we have to remind people that we have the most sun of any province in Canada in terms of hours per year. We've got fabulous wind tunnels in the south. We have great potential for hydrogen energy, and now we're talking about small nuclear as well to help keep our energy sector going forward and keeping emissions controlled. LNG, we have almost limitless amounts of LNG that hasn't yet reached world markets. 62% of China's energy, and it's massive and it's growing, comes from coal, much of it in the rest of Asia and elsewhere. So we have a tremendous opportunity to get our LNG, which is among the cleanest in the world, to the coast and to markets that are keen to actually have it, to diversify their supply from the Middle East and some other places. So energy is going to be a big part of our province, but it's also going to be a major contributor, we believe, to the whole energy climate change relationship around the world. So we have a government that, and again, we have a business-oriented government. We've had a conservative government in our province for 46 of the last 50 years. And that's because Albertans tend to be very business-oriented, practical, can-do kind of people. And this government in its review of where Alberta has been and where it's going, has basically, in a very straightforward way, identified 6 areas that we're going to concentrate on. That will be our agency, but it will also be the government as a whole and many of our partners. This is done in conjunction with regional economic agencies, associations, business leaders. Our 3 core provinces are the whole energy sector, including increasingly renewable, agriculture and agri-food, as I mentioned before. Tourism, I have to say, I think Alberta is the most beautiful place in North America. And that's one reason people come here and they stay here. But we're also focusing increasingly on enabling sectors. We're a connected province, but we can be more connected. So aviation, aerospace, logistics, and that whole ecosystem around transportation and movement of goods and people, whether it's e-commerce, warehousing, railroad, intermodal transport. We have a lot of strengths in Alberta, but this is an area we're going to focus on even more, particularly on the aviation side. Technology is ubiquitous in society. We know that. Our government, we're a dynamic, innovative place, and we've spent a fair bit of money, including grants to companies, to develop and commercialize technology. We've got 28 universities, and some are some of the strongest in Canada, including University of Alberta and University of Calgary. So information, not just information technology, just technology writ large and innovation has become a high priority for our province. We have tools to help companies commercialize, and we have a Ministry of the Economy that is also just been expanded in terms of mandate and is going to focus a lot more on innovation. So we have a Ministry of Jobs, the Economy, and Innovation with one of the strongest ministers in cabinet that was appointed a few weeks ago. This agency is a construct of that group, so we report to the minister, but with a private sector board. And our private sector board, again, just to defy expectations, we don't have a private sector board full of energy and beef guys. It's actually, most of the board is in financial services and technology, and they're global, and it's fabulous. So we're really excited about what we're going to be able to do, working with companies in Alberta, but companies around the world, and especially European companies, either in Europe or in North America. We'll talk about this a little bit because we think it matters. We're generally, as a philosophy, our government doesn't tax heavily and then give out money for subsidies and pick winners and winners among sectors and companies. We're a relatively free and open economy, and we think that matters. The business fundamentals in Alberta are very, very important at a time when companies are also trying to belt tighten and trying to give less of their money to governments to spend on things that they don't necessarily believe in. So we have by far the lowest corporate tax rate in Canada and one of the lowest in North America. We have no payroll taxes. We have no capital taxes. We have no healthcare taxes. Our companies have very, very low tax burden. We also have a relatively low regulatory burden. Governments everywhere like to pile on rules and regulations. The government of Alberta is doing the opposite. We're dismantling and streamlining many of them, so it's easier to set up a company and run the company than ever before. And again, we have people and quality of life and all of that I mentioned before. But the structural advantages for doing business in Canada or in Alberta mean that headquarters that are setting up their main operations in Canada, we have companies, and we're not out there poaching companies from other provinces. We don't do that. We don't go around and say we're better than this province or that province to companies individually, but we are trying to get information into people's hands. And we have companies deciding to move their headquarters from sometimes the United States, sometimes other places in Canada for various reasons. And we have more and more people coming to us to say they want to set up their headquarters in Alberta, or they're coming to Canada and they're looking for a place to be, whether it's from Europe or elsewhere. And they're realizing that some of our economic commercial fundamentals tied to our tax and regulatory policy just makes us a very sensible place to be. Not for everybody, but for more types of sectors and companies than many people realize. I won't go into this in much detail. This is a complicated slide that basically says in the last 20 years, the contribution that energy makes to our GDP has been cut basically in half. And that half has been filled by other sectors, including financial services, technology, tourism, education, retail, housing, construction, and technology, and all of that. So I think that's kind of the bottom line. And it's not that the energy sector has declined. The energy sector has, in many respects, grown, but it's that the whole economy has grown. And that's why per capita, Alberta still has the highest GDP earnings of workers anywhere. I just said that, so we'll go to the next one. Private sector investment coupled with government investment in infrastructure has been a major driver to try to keep our economy going now. We have an advantage in that when the energy sector is hot at $120 a barrel, capital costs are very expensive. People come to the energy sector, company costs and worker costs and construction costs are very high. They have been much, much lower for a long time. So to be able to build factories and roads and warehouses and everything else that companies need to do to set up, it's now become a very, very attractive place to be. So that's why the government and private sector is investing in infrastructure to the tune of 700 projects and $160 billion and growing. Business friendly, I talked about that. So we'll go to the next one. Taxes, I mean, the details are here. So if anybody thinks I'm making things up, we're happy to get this information into people's hands who are on this call. But basically, it's the combination of corporate, personal, sales, payroll. When you add it all in, we are by far the most favorable tax jurisdiction in Canada and among one of the best in North America. More confirmation of some of this. Again, investment, whether it's public sector, private sector, international, we have more investment coming into Alberta than British Columbia. We're pretty well tied with Quebec. Ontario is 3 times to 4 times the size of our population, but we still have, in absolute dollars, we're rivaling even Ontario. Just a very selective indication of some of the best companies we have that have chosen Alberta or in Alberta. And let me just pick out one, because we often don't brag. Albertans don't tend to brag about themselves very much, and this is maybe one reason why people don't know very much about us, or they don't know as much as they should. So you see in the top left-hand corner is Google DeepMind. Google DeepMind is a European company. It's based in the UK, where it's headquartered. Its very first location for operations in North America is in Edmonton, Alberta. And it chose Edmonton, Alberta, because we have one of the top 3 artificial intelligence research centers in Canada, and we have had for a long time. People think of Waterloo and Montreal. It's actually Edmonton rivals the 3 of them, and this is widely recognized. It's widely recognized by governments and policymakers, but more importantly, it's widely recognized by companies in the tech sector. And Google DeepMind, because of our rich research capacity, the commercialization strengths we have, the talent we have, the ability to hire, attract, and keep staff that don't keep on moving around. It's a stable, very sophisticated talent environment. So Google DeepMind chose Edmonton, and many others. We can't go into all of them, but we are talking to high-tech companies every day that are looking at us for some of the same reasons, including companies in Europe, and we think that's going to accelerate. We can probably spend a lot of time talking about what Europe sells to us and what we sell to Europe, but again, I think the bigger picture is the relationship is very complementary. Our companies need to be in Europe and partner with European companies. European companies need to be in North America. The 2 markets are so critical to one another, but in many ways, they're kind of, if we look backwards, they don't really represent 2020 and beyond. I think what's really exciting is the kind of areas that are so important to both economies: the environment, technology, innovation, healthcare for aging populations, the education sector as we need to adapt to disruptive economies. I mean, all those areas we have shared interests and great compatibilities to do more. It used to be we talked about complementarities, manufacturing in Europe, and we're more natural resources. I think a lot of that whole paradigm is now kind of history. And while we still have great natural resources, and these are important sectors, and we have room to do more in those, as I talked about, we have room to do more in a lot of other areas that are important to both jurisdictions, and I think to many of the companies that are on this call. CETA, you mentioned earlier, Delphine, that it's a 3rd-year anniversary. We think CETA is very important. If we can remove barriers to trade, barriers to investment, and limitations on the movement of people, we will do a lot more together. And that's what we're going to see in this relationship. Our experts have done analysis and have identified a number of areas, but I think it goes well beyond that. And I think the streamlined ability to move people back and forth is even more important than our sector analysis. A little bit about Invest Alberta Corporation. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit because we want people on this call to reach out to us. I want them to call me. I will work very closely with Bonnie, who's over there beside us, and Ryan, and we've got a few other people in the room, because we have a joined up approach in the government of Alberta where you don't have to shop around to figure out who you have to talk to. We will help bring people together, ensure that the regulatory and policy instruments that are important for establishing or growing a business are aligned with business interests. And then our little team, and again, we have 2 or 3 of us right now, but we're about to go out with about a dozen job notices this week. We've appointed a fabulous permanent chief economic officer who starts next week. I will stay on as chief operating officer. And companies who are interested in Alberta, or who think they might be interested in Alberta, and have a conversation. And it can be frankly about anything. If it's not us, we'll find a way of connecting you to somebody who has a compatible interest or can help you, whether it's in the private sector or government. We want companies to reach out to us and talk about their business plans. If they're spending too much on rent and having a hard time finding and keeping people in Toronto or Vancouver, or they want to capitalize on some of the areas where we're strong as a complement to their main operations, as a 2nd or 3rd operation in Canada, or if they want to manufacture to sell to the United States under our revised NAFTA, we have a very, very strong manufacturing sector. Because of our food and our energy and related sectors, we have a strong manufacturing and logistics or ecosystem. And if it's technology people are interested in, we've got a wonderful startup culture, and people are really starting to realize that, and it's flourishing. So we're going to be a very business-oriented place. We don't give out subsidies and grants and things, but what we do is we connect, we advise, we support. We have the resources to bring analytical skills, data to people who are looking at a possible business case. We can bring some of those tools, and we're gonna have experts in our organization, and we're gonna connect to other experts. We also run our international network, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I just basically want to say, if you want to start somewhere and have people that are very business oriented speaking to you and trying to figure out how we can help you make advance and grow your business and make decisions on where and how you're going to operate. I mean, it could be small. The small is often a place to start before they get big. We're ready to talk to pretty well anybody and help, even if it's not us. So we'll just talk about our international network. Historically, Alberta's international network, which is one of the strongest of any province, Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Alberta have international networks. Some of the smaller provinces have very selective representation abroad. We have, we're up there in the big four in terms of having people abroad to connect with businesses to help our companies do business, but to help them do business in Alberta. It's oriented very heavily towards Asia, and that's excites me because I think it's a very important region that we all need to understand better. Although, again, fraught with some challenges, especially in China these days. But this government has basically decided that there are many service providers, including EUCCAN, Chambers of Commerce, the Federal Trade Commissioner Service, which has expanded significantly in emerging markets. There are many platforms and sources of support to do exports and help our companies connect with distributors and agents and go to trade shows and things. Nobody can sell our sort of native jurisdiction like people in our own area can. So we're shifting our focus of attention from helping mostly exporters to doing mostly investment attraction work. That means a few things. It means changing our talent composition internationally. So we have people doing less logistics and kind of more basic business connections to people that are higher level, that have more business experience, that bring networks to the table. We're going to work with chambers and banks and law firms and consultancies much more closely globally, but we're also going to rebalance. So we are in the process of reducing our capacity in Asia, and we will be expanding our capacity in the United States close to home, but to some extent the Middle East. And a top priority for us is expanding our on-the-ground capacity in Europe. So we will be hiring representatives, setting up offices, and developing networks to talk a lot more about investment partnerships and in all of its various forms. We're going to be much more engaged with Europe. And it's not just about investment, it's also to deepen our conversation on environmental, social, and governance values and needs that are so critical to business and to societies. That is equally important to the government and people of Alberta, and this is an area we're going to be ramping up capabilities and expertise and deepening the conversation on how do we collectively operate and support a lower carbon world and do so with technology and business practices and partnerships that make sense for everybody. And this is going to be an area where we know we're going to be talking to Europeans a lot more. So maybe with that, I don't know how long I spoke, maybe not quite 40 minutes, probably more than I had anticipated. But I just want to say we'd love to have a conversation either now, if anybody has any questions, but maybe more importantly, we want people to reach out to us if they want to have individual conversations based on their particular companies. So maybe I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Ron. Yeah, I was about to say the last slide has your email address. So to all the attendees, feel free again to take Ron's email address so you can contact him and his team. And again, thank you very much for the presentation. Even for me, again, as a newcomer in Canada, I arrived in February. It's very interesting to see to understand how each province works and what are the key sectors, etc. So I might not move yet to Alberta, but for sure I will come to enjoy hopefully Alberta tourism. And also thank you for your words on CETA. Indeed, it's important. I added in the chat box the link to our CETA panel discussion last week. And indeed, it's important to remind everyone that in this new kind of global scene we are in now, indeed, I think Europe and Canada have a great opportunity to work together, to do more together. And there's an agreement for this. CETA is here. CETA provides a lot of different options, whether it has to do with the trade. Of course, when we think of CETA, we also think of custom duties, etc. But there's also other opportunities, like, for example, public procurement. Canadian companies can take advantage in public procurements in Europe and vice versa. We actually we did a very practical guide for European companies to benefit from public procurement, opportunities in Canada. So all this is very important to remind. Again, I think really CETA represents a safe place to trade and invest for European and Canadian businesses. So we have some question. I think some of them you kind of already answered, but I will put it here again. So if we want to have a professional trip to Alberta, which big company institution should we visit? I guess it's, of course, you first, but if you have any other maybe advice for companies who would like to come to Alberta, either whether it's for trade opportunities or investment opportunities.
So sure, Delphine, I think that's a very important question. And you know, we live in a sophisticated world where we don't have cookie cutter approaches, right? So what we would do is, if you had a delegation of your members, we would obviously look at their interests, their sectors, find out what kind of companies they are, what their business interests might be, and we would do a bespoke, tailored program for them. This would not be government heavy, because while government has a role to play and they want to understand our policies, regulations, our incentive programs, and things like that, I think more importantly, we want to connect business people to business people. So we would work very closely with our business communities, the cities of Edmonton and Calgary, and some wonderful cities in between and around them, and work with our companies that would be open to sharing their experiences. Albertans are very, very generous people, as most Canadians are, and just sharing their expertise in whatever area they're in. You know, renewable energy, solar, wind, geothermal, petrochemicals is actually a booming area in Alberta because of low feedstock prices and large amounts of feedstock. You know, the energy downturn also has some silver linings. Every phenomenon does. So if people are interested in some of those areas, or food production, we all want safe, reliable, healthy food. How we treat aging in our province, or education, or the whole innovation sector, all those areas where we're really excited about what we're doing here, and where we don't want to live in a bubble. We want to connect to the rest of Canada and to Europe and elsewhere. We would set up happily programs that make sense to the interests of your members who might be interested in coming, whether it's individually or as a group. And I'm confident it would be very worthwhile for everybody.
Thank you, Ron. And indeed, of course, traveling now, it becomes in this global scene a little bit more complicated, but this is also why we came up with this series of webinars, to make sure we can still connect European companies and Canadian businesses here. So again, to all our participants today from Europe, whether you are in Europe or representing a EU company here in Canada, feel free to contact Ron. His email address is on the screen right now. Ron, I was wondering, because you mentioned an example of I think Google, was it Google OpenMind, if I recall?
Google DeepMind, but
DeepMind,
OpenMind's
yeah.
good too. But it's DeepMind.
DeepMind. Well, since it's a company based in UK, with the Brexit situation, if you have maybe another example of either trade or investment project done by a EU company, if you could share with us, if you have something in mind.
Okay, so I am gonna turn to some of my colleagues here, because I'm the Asia guy, or I have been the Asia guy, and I can talk to you for hours about Asian companies.
Okay, great.
We are working right now on specific projects from European companies that are looking at investing, and some of them are very large, and they're looking at Alberta to be their destination of choice in North America. But I can't talk about those yet. But I will kind of turn to my colleagues, and maybe they can give a few other examples of European companies that are based here.
Great.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about from both the trade and investment side. First of all, a lot of, and I probably won't talk about.
Oops.
We're still on. Yeah. We're still on. Okay. Specific companies, but the technologies, especially around clean energy, a lot of waste to biomass. Opportunities and bioenergy, things like that. A lot of the technologies have been developed either in France or Germany and been exported over here to Canada, but also are now in development here in Alberta. So we're looking at a lot of the clean energy, clean tech, smart grids, remote monitoring, anything that is accessible around the energy services sector, but looking at clean opportunities for it. So there are a number of them that we've been working on for the last little while. And then on the other side, the trade opportunities, again, are the same way. We're looking at bringing a lot of companies from Alberta, but not only Alberta, Western Canada in general, over to, I think we saw on the one slide, it was Netherlands, France, Germany are some of the big areas where we've got a lot of trade activity. Clearly, 2020 has presented a couple of hiccups when it comes to that, but as Ron said correctly, we're not looking to work in a bubble. We're looking more towards that cohort opportunity, and we can see Canada, EU as being cohorts within this new world and this new trade world, trade and investment. So there's a lot of opportunity there, but the most immediate ones for, I think that Canada and the EU, where we have those opportunities, are again around clean tech, clean energy, applications for the traditional energy sector, but how to make it even more beneficial and more useful for all people here in Canada. So those are the big ones right now.
Actually, Delphine, I do have a couple of concrete examples now that I think about it. I don't know exactly who the investors are from Europe, but I know the countries where the capital and technology is coming from. So again, Alberta is full of surprises for people. Edmonton Airport is the largest airport in Canada in terms of geography. It's 7,700 acres. It is effectively a city on its own. So it can approve. It basically has its own bylaws because it's federally regulated and has delegated authorities. It can set up and approve building permits and supportive services generally faster than most cities can. I'll give you an example. So Aurora Cannabis is the largest medicinal cannabis operation in the world. Its one building is 11 football fields. It's on Edmonton Airport land. And that project was approved and starting to build in 100 days. A project that has just been announced or about to be announced is the largest solar energy field for any airport in the world. And this is a German capital coming into that. It's important because, well, Edmonton Airport, all of its power will be locally produced and it will have excess power selling to the grid, completely based on renewable solar power. And again, technology and capital is coming for Europe for that because it is a sound business proposition. There's no government subsidies going into this. And importantly, some of their key partners are First Nations groups. It's another thing that's maybe little known is that now while these relations can be challenging, and there's always room for improvement. Alberta's relations between the business community, government, and First Nations are probably stronger than in any jurisdiction in Canada. We have many, many cooperative business ventures, whether it's pipelines, LNG projects, agriculture, renewable energy, where we are working with very entrepreneurial, business-minded, collaborative First Nations groups. We also, unlike British Columbia, our land claims have been, for the most part, settled. Right? When Canada was being built, those negotiating the land claims kind of gave up when they hit the Rocky Mountains. But they didn't give up coming through Alberta. So we have treaties that are in place that spell out who owns what, and it means we can get the business quickly. And that helps. I think that's significant. And it's resulting in concrete major projects in innovative sectors that have Europeans closely involved.
Yeah, that's great, and indeed, it's. I mean, green transition is really a huge topic now in Europe and in Canada, of course. So, and we know we have some strong European companies who are really good in this field, and I have a comment on the example from the French side. Well, Schneider Electronics, Suez, EDF, Renouvelable, indeed are in Alberta. I have another interesting question. Somebody is asking, what are the main Canadian companies which are established in Alberta? I think it's also can give an idea to European companies who they could meet or who they could deal with when they come in Alberta.
Do you want to take this one?
Quite you're the main Canadian companies that are
Major Canadian companies that are headquartered here. I mean, it's a quite a big, diverse business environment, right? I mean,
yes.
I mean, energy is one, of course, with our Canadian Natural Resources Limited, Suncor, et cetera, but it goes well beyond that. Champion Pet Foods, ATCO, which operates around the world. I spent 2 years in Afghanistan, of all places, and ATCO was there supporting the US, NATO military, many of our European security partners who were in Afghanistan with us. I mean, ATCO is a global operator for facilities, buildings, support services, and it's headquartered right here in Edmonton. We have high-tech companies like Jobber that do business software that are growing rapidly.
Yeah, Amazon has a big presence. I mean, not a Canadian company, but obviously a very large presence and investment here in the Alberta region. Calgary's been one of the corporate headquarters, not only for the energy sector, but that's been moving into the ICT area and clean tech as well. So, yeah, we can definitely get some examples. Just depends which sector or which area you might be looking at. I mean, it's a fairly large.
Yeah.
I mean, Stantec is one of the Canada's biggest consulting engineering firms, is based in Edmonton. WestJet, we all know WestJet is based in Calgary. CP is based in Calgary, the rail line.
There are a number in agribusiness as well, but that is a different ministry, so we don't.
I mean, chemicals, Nova Chemicals is based here. We can, ATB, I mean, is a local bank. We have two Western Canadian banks headquartered in Alberta, plus all the big ones. And I should say, I mean, it's aside from individual names, 17 of the world's biggest banks are based in Alberta. Calgary is the second capital center in Canada after Toronto. And the way banks operate is most centers in Canada have to report to headquarters, mostly in Toronto. Calgary has delegated authority to make high-level banking decisions. And again, Japanese, Chinese, British banks have chosen Calgary as a key location to be because it's just such a diverse, significant business center, and they cover Western Canada out of Calgary for the most part. So it's not just individual companies, it's whole clusters of companies.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you had Ron's email address, so if there's any sector in particular that you are interested in, please, I think, feel free to contact them or to contact us, and we'll of course put you in contact with them. We have two other questions that are not completely 100% related to EU and Canada, but we will still take them because it's interesting to understand the scene. I think, Ron, I will give you one and I will take care of the other one, because one is on Asia, the other one is most on Africa. So somebody is asking why China has become a reputation risk for companies. So if I take it a little bit on the EU side, maybe what CETA, for example, represents for Canadian or EU companies, rather than going to another region. So since you have a lot of knowledge on the Asia market, maybe I can let you take this.
Sure. I mean, I'll keep it short and high level, but if anybody wants to talk about China privately, I'm happy to do that, right? We all want to share our experiences. But I'll just give you one example. If a company wants to buy Huawei telecom equipment, there is a reputational risk because we have a major diplomatic rupture between Canada and China at the national level because of our arrest based on treaty obligations of one of Huawei's top executives and the daughter of the founder. And then China illegally detained, arrested, and abused 2 Canadians. So, you know, we look at that and it's created anger, it's created distrust. China has politicized trade by delisting some of our meat plants from exporting. It has found nefarious reasons to stop canola exports. I think any sector or company, and this is not just for Canada. I mean, Australia is going through this, EU companies are going through this. China has married business and politics, and in a way that's to a greater degree than ever before. I think we're taking investment from China, particularly state-owned enterprise investment, working with certain Chinese products that are controversial, doing Chinese, for example, China is a world leader in facial recognition. Much of that is used in China to control populations, including minority populations in parts of the country. So, companies buying those technologies run a reputational risk because those same technologies are used to subjugate populations. There's lots of reasons why there's reputational risk. It's not reputational risk in everything. We will continue to work closely with China. We will take Chinese investment if it makes sense. 3/4 of all Chinese investment in Canada is in Alberta, and most of it is state-owned enterprise investment because of the nature of our economy and our energy sector. And those investors, for the most part, are excellent business partners. So we don't want to be simplistic about China, but we're just saying that we don't want to put. I think we probably overextended the degree to which we put limited resources in the China relationship. And we know that predictability, transparency, the rule of law, common values, those are in shorter and shorter supply as the world kind of fragments. And as some jurisdictions with different political systems, histories, value systems, authoritarian regimes become stronger and more ambitious. It means that countries that are more like-minded, the relationship to work together with one another, but also in common front against some of these international practices we don't agree with, and in some cases we think are illegal. It's just important to do that. But if anybody ever wants to talk about China, I'm happy to do that. I'm a believer in engaging China. I think we have to understand the place, and I think we have to find ways of collaborating on areas of common interest, including the environment, clean energy, quality food, education, and so forth. So happy to talk to one of your members offline at any time.
Great. And taking it back to CETA, indeed, I think CETA, I mean, again, Canada and EU share common values. It's really a stable political system, stable economical system. So I guess, yeah, I'm sure there's a really interest in doing more between Canadian and EU businesses. I will take the one on Africa very shortly because we are more here to talk about Europe and Canada. So we have an economic development manager. He's African Canadian and is asking if there's any project with connection with African countries. What I just want to say before I maybe give you the floor, Ron, is that we do believe that exchange between Europe and Canada for the European companies dealing with Canada it's a way to also reach the US markets. And for Canadian companies, we do believe also that reaching Europe is also a bridge. Then you can easily bridge to Africa. There's a lot of agreements that will be signed between that are in the process of being signed with between Europe and Africa. I used to spend my last 10 years in West Africa and working with the European Business Organization there. So yeah, we do believe that Canada and Europe can be actually bridged to other regions of the world. But I guess, of course, I mean, Ron, maybe you can also give a side of the answer. I guess, I mean, some African countries are also relying a lot on energy, and since your province also, I guess there's already some kind of business connection, mostly in the energy sector.
Well, look, I mean, because we're a diversified economy, and we have strong technical expertise in resource development, and the environment, and food, and so forth. We work closely with many Asian or African partners and markets. We work closely with the African Development Bank on some of the technical assistance that they're supporting, where we have strong, again, engineering companies. So, we don't have offices there. These days with COVID, we don't lead many missions, but then we don't lead many missions to Europe either. Much of this is virtual. And, but we hope that that limitations to travel will at some point, not too far from now, be made easier.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I can just say broadly that every major region of the world is important to us, and we do business there. Our companies do business there, yeah. And that includes Toronto. We will be establishing representation in Toronto.
Okay.
So we like the rest of Canada. We have lots of interest with the rest of Canada. We don't always like the Canadian government or some of their decisions, but we will of course engage with the Canadian government very closely, and we have to. But we will be establishing some kind of representation in Toronto. And we will be traveling to Toronto often, so we can certainly stay in touch.
Great. We have one last question, but I think it has been answered all the way through the presentation, is what are the opportunities for cooperation for small and medium businesses? I mean, I think it was quite clear that Alberta has a diverse sector and is not only concentrated on energy. So, I mean, unless you want to add some few words on this, Ron, maybe we can.
Well, I can only say, Calgary and Edmonton have very sophisticated economic development agencies. They work with small companies. Some of our smaller cities do as well. If a small company is looking for some guidance, support, connectivity, and so forth, our major cities, which are welcoming to SMEs, and costs can be, in many ways, quite compelling. Calgary has a lot of empty office space that came online as the energy sector dropped. So it's a very inexpensive place to be right downtown with great infrastructure. So for small companies that are starting out and really watching the bottom line, again, our low taxes on companies, low administrative fees for payroll and health and all that kind of stuff, and relatively low regulations mean a small company can sit up here, and we can help them navigate, and other players in Alberta will do the same, and we can connect people.
Okay, great. I think we are just on time. It's 11:58, so to be mindful of everybody's time, I think we are going to conclude. I'm happy that we traveled quite a lot between EU, Canada, Alberta, Africa, and Asia. This is great. I will send an email to all the participants with your contact, Ron, so and Ryan and all your team, so they can actually be in touch with you. Again, thank you very much for your presentation. Even for me, again, it was very useful, and I think it was useful also for all our participants, whether they are based in Europe or in Canada. We do understand that we should not hesitate to contact you. So again, I will share all your contacts. Yes, thank you very much. Looking forward to maybe coming and meeting you in Alberta once we can, move a little bit more freely.
But you can come now, right? We have flights. The one place we can travel is within Canada.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
And that's why the Stanley Cup playoffs were held in Edmonton.
Exactly. I will try my best.
We're a relatively safe place to come and visit and stay.
That's
but we'll
great.
make sure, but we do want to distribute the contact details for Ryan and Bonnie as well.
Yeah, I will be in touch with you after, and then indeed I will share it with all the participants. And yes, to conclude, I just want to remind everybody that was just the first edition of our 1 week, 1 province. So from next week, actually, second week of October, we will continue with other provinces. Everything is on our website, so you can check. You can send us an email, info@euccan.com. Again, Ron and your team, thank you very much for this very lively presentation and question and answer session. And I hope it will, be useful for European businesses to connect with you. And anyway, we will be in touch.
Thank you for your interest, everybody.
Thank you very much, and have a great day or evening, depending on where you are calling from.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.